Hello everybody! This week I thought I would do a quick video talking about this Fabriano 140 pound cold press paper that I picked up at a local art store this weekend. This paper is a cold press paper, but I found that it has more texture than I'm used to seeing. It's definitely more similar to the Arches rough paper that I also picked up, but since I haven't had a chance to use that one yet, I can't compare them directly. I do look forward to doing that in a future video though. So since I thought this video would be pretty boring if you were just staring at a white sheet of paper, I thought I would include this time lapse, and this is the first painting that I did using this paper, and I will kind of go back and forth talking about this painting a little bit as I go into the pros and cons of this paper. So my first impression was how beautifully the paint laid down on this paper. I was extremely pleased with how bright and vibrant the colors showed up. Even from the beginning. I'm used to more inexpensive papers, and I now understand spending a little bit more money on paper in the beginning. I was always of the mindset I wanted to spend more on paints. I've always been more intrigued by paints. I think they're just more exciting. And I'm not going to say that I necessarily regret waiting this long to try like really nice paper, but I can see where the benefits are. And now I am seeing that there is a bit of a learning curve between the two. With this paper, it was so easy to get such a flat wash. I didn't have to worry about any sort of backgrounds. I didn't have to worry about it cauliflowering. I didn't have to sit there and, you know, kind of work the paint down so that it was in a flat layer. It just kind of did it for me. It was really, really easy to work with, and the colors showed up really bright and vibrant and beautiful right from the beginning. Even though I used very watered down mixtures, I'm using my Mission Gold watercolors again, so they tend to be very vibrant paints, but I was surprised that it showed up so well in a base layer, and I thought that the end colors after several layers of me going through and adding more depth and more detail, it just showed up a bit more, I guess, crisp and vibrant than some of the other papers that I've used. And I really appreciated that while I was painting, I was seeing the colors that I was going to see once it dried. And it really made it easier to guess at my values as I was going without having to do a lot of corrections later on. Now for this piece, branch with some leaves on it, I did want it to look like a bit of greenery that had been taken and flattened in like a notebook or a journal or something to have it be preserved. And I wanted it to look like something that had been taken possibly at the end of summer or early fall, something that had showed maybe some leaves that were kind of turning at the end of the season, or maybe were older and dying and needed to be pruned. But I really wanted it to kind of show that difference between the two sets of leaves. So I did find it a little difficult to find a reference photo that was exactly what I was looking for. So I found with this painting, I worked on it over several days, and I just kind of kept putting it on a shelf and taking looks at it and just fixing and adjusting things as I went. I did find that this paper, it was a little difficult for me to add gradients and details in the way that I am used to with my more inexpensive papers. I found that with the way I usually add gradients is a bit drier, and this paper, it was kind of difficult to get a smooth gradient in that manner. And I found that over time it was a lot easier to do these gradients by having a wetter brush. This became much more noticeable with areas that had darker pigments, as you could really see the texture of the paper showing through. And that was something that I had to work around. But luckily I found that this paper overall was really easy to glaze, and it was really easy to fix mistakes as I was going forward. I did find that I was able to kind of disrupt that pigment if I overworked an area, but luckily it was forgiving enough that I could fix it and move forward without having that mistake kind of show through later on. I didn't try to actually scrub the paper, so I wasn't actively trying to lift up any pigments, but just in working the way I normally did, even with a lot of layers, I found that I wasn't moving that pigment. It was staying the way I wanted it to. So for this painting, I did use a pretty good mix of colors. I used sap green for a lot of it, and I used yellow ochre, as well as burnt sienna and light red, which is like a reddish brown for these darker leaves. And the problem with having something that I had in my head but I couldn't find in a reference was figuring out how I wanted these two different sets of leaves that I had found in different reference photos to really come together to look like something that was cohesive. And a lot of that was finding ways to take these colors and neutralize them. So that was a lot of fun with this painting. It was a lot of adding, you know, subtle hints of green into the warm colors and brown into the greens, so that you could kind of see that aging and kind of blend the two together. And another challenge that I had was trying to get these branches, well, leaves rather, to look like there was a hierarchy in depth, but while still showing that these leaves were flattened or pressed, because I didn't want that to be too pronounced in the final piece. So that was interesting and a lot of fun, and I feel like over the course of these past couple weeks I have really been able to kind of hone in on how to bring depth to greens, and it's been something where I don't feel like I have mastered it by any means, but I am a lot further than I was when I started. Now this paper, like, I have touched on how much texture there was to it, and it was closer to a rough paper. I did do my sketch directly on this paper, and I used my color erase pencils like I usually do, as well as the Bic crystal pen, and I found that despite the texture I was able to draw on this without any sort of real issue. It didn't end up in any sort of wavy lines, and I was also able to add detail to the leaves in a way that I felt like it showed through really well. None of that felt like it was disrupted as a result of having all of this extra texture. The washes were a little rough in some areas, but like I said before, I was able to glaze over those and get a lot of that to come out of there, so that was really nice. And I really feel like at this point I'm kind of out of things to say about this painting and about this paper. I really did enjoy it though, and I could definitely see myself buying more of this paper in the future. Since I still have a few more to try, I'm not going to invest in a lot of it right now, but I do have a couple others that I would like to maybe compare in a much more comprehensive video in the future. So if you have any brands or paper types you would like to see, let me know and I would be happy to look into them and review them. I did find this paper to be kind of middle range when it comes to price. The Arches paper was a little over $9, I believe. I think it was $9.25, and this was about $5.50, so it was right in the middle. The Strathmore sheets were probably about $2.50 in the store that I was in. I guess now I will just let this piece finish out. I'm at kind of the end stages of doing some more like shadowy looks to the leaves, kind of showing that the leaves are, you know, tilted or in light. I haven't added any sort of background shadow to this piece, mainly because I did want it to look kind of flat, but I don't know. It didn't look natural with it not having any sort of depth or shadows to it, so that's why I wanted to add those. But that is all for this week and for this painting. I hope you enjoyed this video, and let me know if you want me to try any other paper or supplies in a future video. Bye!